What's up, guys? Alton here, and we're gonna go ahead and get into this video. And I know that you guys have already seen the topic or the headline to this video, and I think that this is going to be the video that is going to put me in some hot water. I know that I've made some other videos that have been pretty controversial. I've touched on some pretty controversial topics, but I think this one is probably going to end up being the video that's going to put me into a lot of trouble. But as always, on a serious note, we're going to discuss this from a biblical perspective like we always do. And I think that there are some things that just always need to be said, some issues that always have to be addressed. Us as Christians, we can't be scared to bring these things up due to the possibility of losing a job or losing friends or family members or associates or anything like that. When we see things such as this and we see how it is affecting society, we really have to start speaking up, and I'm always a big advocate for that. So let's just go ahead and get right into this video. Now, about 2 weeks ago, I saw a video from a young lady. She was ranting and raving, and this was on Facebook. And she was talking about how some guy, I guess he had finally come out as pedo or pedosexual. And for a lot of people who don't know what I'm talking about, the pedophiles are now starting to come out, and they're starting to say that they're pedophiles, they're known pedophiles, and now they've given themselves a new kind of like this new title. Pedosexual or pedosexual, and they want to add that to the end of the Lgbtq-A++, whatever, all of those acronyms that they have for the LGBT community. So now they're trying to say that they are, or they have this natural desire for children, and they want to be a part of the LGBT community. So, of course, this has some people triggered, especially a lot of people in the LGBT community, because they want to disassociate themselves with anything to do with pedophiles or, this pedosexual or pedosexual type movement. Now, as a Christian, and I think I even mentioned this in a couple of videos, but I knew that this was going to take place. I've been saying this for the past few years, that it's going to come a point to where the pedophiles are going to start coming out. They see all of this sexual revolution. They see, people just walking around here doing whatever they want sexually, and everyone's being okay with it. For instance, you have this guy who, I think he's in his 50s. He was married, he had children, and now he wants to self-identify as a 6-year-old girl. And people are accepting this stuff. And this is the type of world that we're living in today, to where people can do whatever they want sexually, and you can now be accepted. But when it comes down to it, if you have that type of mindset, and you believe that love is love, and everyone should just be able to love who they want to love, then the obvious question becomes, well, where do you draw that line? Anybody can just say, hey, I'm a guy, I want to be in love with a guy. I'm a straight male, or I consider myself a straight male, but I want to be in love with a trans person, a person who was born male but now is female. Or if I'm a female and I want to be in love with a person who was born male but now is female, then then that's okay. And everybody is always, not everyone is okay with that. But like I always said to other people, where do you draw the line? Because when these men, or when these people in general, because there's some women too, that when it comes down to it, when they say that they are in love with children, how do you draw that line? How do you draw the line to say whether that person is right or wrong? And now I'm not making an argument for the pedophile. I'm really not. So before people start watching this video and saying, "Oh, he must be some in the closet pedophile or something like that," no, that is not where I'm coming from. But I've always been the type of person to have this rational type of thinking. And a lot of us in America have this rational type of thinking. But when it comes to a lot of irrational thinking, and then just to put it out there, a lot of irrational thinking when it talks about sexuality and sexual freedom and all of that stuff. Like I said before, when you start to open up that box and you don't draw a line, then everything and anything is fair game. Now, I will understand why the LGBT people will kind of be upset and they will want to reject the notion that pedophiles are now trying to be added to their organization or to their acronym. Now I will understand that, because there's a lot of people that I know who are LGBT who are not pedophiles. But let's face it, the pedophiles are basically doing the same thing that the people in the LGBT community had been accused of. Okay, one of the things that people have always said about the LGBT community was that if you were homosexual, you were basically a person who was a pedophile. Now, I know that a lot of people who are LGBT, they resent that. And I get that too. But see, it's pretty hard for me to not correlate this open sexuality thing, the LGBT movement, with pedophilia, because now I'm not saying, and once again, I'm not saying that anyone who is gay or homosexual that they are pedophiles. That's not what I'm saying. Okay, let me just clear that up again, because I don't want anyone taking my words, twisting them, and saying that I'm saying that people who are LGBT, they are all pedophiles or homosexual, or people who are homosexual are all pedophiles. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is I've listened to a lot of stories from people who are homosexual. And as a matter of fact, I remember the guy, the Anton Dotson. I'm going to go ahead and play a short clip of him. But anyway, before I play that clip, he was actually explaining how he became homosexual. And he was talking about how he was raped. So let's just go ahead and take a listen to that.
At what point, growing up, did you know that you were gay?
I first realized that I was gay, like in first or second grade. I was looking at other boys in school rather than looking at the girls. And, after a while, it kind of suppressed. But when I got older, like close to my teen years, I got raped. I was snatched up from a little grocery store, a corner store, and he pulled me to the back of the store and raped me on the side of some garbage cans, some city dumpsters. So I think that's what sparked it back up. And, also living with my mom and my sister and my grandmother, I kind of picked up their habits. You know what I'm saying? So that's what sparked this whole gay thing. My sister, she's in her emotions. My mama in her emotions. My grandmother in her emotions. I kind of got caught up in that.
I mean, before that happened, were you into men at all, or were you into girls?
Before that happened, I really wasn't into nothing because I was young. My mother and them, they always made me focus on school and stuff like that. So I never really got into the lifestyle heavily until my teenage years.
Because there's always there's a very long-standing debate, in the gay community of, are you gay because you're born that way, or are you gay because of certain events that happen in your life? Now, from your point of view, based on this, do you feel that, you became gay because of this, because of the rape?
From my point of view, I don't believe I can't say that being gay, you're born that way, because you're not. That was a choice for me because, and I may have been born into it, but I was not born gay. And meaning that I had already had sisters around me. So growing up with a whole bunch of females, that already triggered like, oh yeah, he's gonna have some of these women ways, some of these girl ways, which I did. And even today, I'm still got feminine ways, you know what I'm saying? But I still handle mine as a man. So to that question, no, it's you're not born that way. That's just a choice to celebrate sexuality.
Now, his story is quite similar to a lot of people's story who are homosexual. And that's one of the things that I've always heard from people who are homosexual, that it wasn't that they were 3 or 4 years old and they just decided, or they felt like that they were homosexual. It was always an encounter with someone who was older, and it was usually someone who was, I would probably say, legally an adult interacting with someone who is legally a child. So it always has stemmed from some type of sexual abuse. And that's what I've always heard from people in the LGBT community, that their homosexual lifestyle or their choices always stemmed from them being somehow raped or molested or something like that. And that's how they became LGBT. Now, I'm not saying that that happens with everyone who is a homosexual or anyone who self-identifies as LGBT or anything like that. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that you have an overwhelming number of stories of how people have had these encounters, or they've had these type of run-ins with other people who are older than them, who basically turned them out. And one prime example of that is when we look at Hollywood today, right? And I've heard about, you know, some of these child stars who were molested and who were raped by older people in the industry. Like, for instance, the whole Kevin Spacey thing, right? You know, Kevin Spacey, he was accused of actually raping this one guy. I think Kevin Spacey at the time was like 21, and this guy at the time was like 14. He claims to have been 14 at the time, and he claims that Kevin Spacey sexually assaulted him. And instead of Kevin Spacey denying it, Kevin Spacey actually just basically said, hey, you know, sorry for what I did, and, you know, I'm a gay man now. And now everyone has kind of embraced him as a gay man, forgetting the fact, or pushing the fact aside, that he actually molested a 14-year-old guy. And Kevin Spacey was actually in his 20s. So see, these are some of the stories that we hear about. And instead of us dealing with this directly and saying that we don't care what someone comes out and says, or something, you know, such as Kevin Spacey, you know, we don't care about you being a homosexual or now coming out as being a homosexual. What we're saying is that you have been accused of pedophilia and you did not deny it. You're basically saying that, you know, it's all good, or I'm sorry for what I did back then, but, you know, now I'm a gay man, to kind of divert the fact that you molested someone who was younger than you. And what has happened, I believe what has happened is that the community, the pedophilia community, has been watching this for a long time. And they've been seeing the reaction that people have been given to the LGBT community. And us Christians, and not just us Christians, there's been others too, but primarily us Christians, we've always been saying this is a slippery slope. Okay, it was never about trying to be against someone who was LGBT or trying to restrict the rights of people who were gay or straight or transgender or whatever, trying to keep them from marrying and giving them rights and laws. No one was. That wasn't the fight. The fight was, where do you guys draw the line? That's what the fight. That's basically what our argument was. Is where do you draw this line? Because anyone can say, yeah, we can love. We should be able to love whoever we want to love. And I mean, that sounds all good on paper, but where do you draw this line? And we used to always ask the question, and we still ask the question, what if a person wants to be in love with an animal? And what if somebody wants to be in love with a child? And we've gotten such a backlash, and we've never got a straight answer where the LGBT community has come out and said, hey, we don't support this. If it gets to this point, this is how we're going to combat it. Whatever. It's just been, don't talk to us about that. You're such bigots. You guys are hateful. And us as Christians, we've always just tried to dialogue or have some type of rational or meaningful conversation about it and saying, hey, listen, when you guys start to do this, then how are you going to stop people who are pedophiles and who partake in bestiality? How are you going to stop them from making the same arguments that you guys make? And people don't want to talk about that. They didn't want to talk about it. But now you're seeing that these chickens are coming home to roost. People have been fighting and they've been pushing for this whole LGBT thing. They've been pushing for gay marriage. They've been pushing for transgenderism. Our military has been paying for the transgender sex reassignment surgeries, taking our taxpayer dollars and paying for people in the military who says that I don't feel like being a man anymore, or I don't feel like being a woman, and I just want to be the opposite sex now. And our military has been paying for it. Our tax dollars have been paying for it. And everybody thinks that that is okay. And now we see in Hollywood, where the whole hashtag Me Too thing has been going on, and people have been coming forward saying they've been assaulted sexually by some of these executives and stuff like that. I believe that in a minute, we're going to start hearing about people who were children who are going to start telling their stories about how they were sexually assaulted by those who were older in the same industry as them. They're going to start saying that, hey, when I was a kid, I remember when this actor or this famous actress or some sexually assaulted me when I was a kid. And you're going to start hearing about that coming out soon enough. It's just like, for you guys who may not be familiar with the hip-hop culture or the hip-hop community, recently, and I won't say recently as in, within the last year or so, but I think it's been about 2 years ago, the whole allegations about African Bambaataa. He was accused of sexually assaulting little boys, and this one guy who is, I think he's now in his 50s or something. I think African Bambaataa is maybe in his 60s now, but he was saying how he was sexually molested for years by this guy. Now, what got me was the response from the hip-hop community, especially KRS-One. Now, KRS-One, if you guys don't know, he has started this thing called the Temple of Hip-Hop, and it's supposed to be some type of religion, some type of hip-hop religion. And for those that say, oh, no, it's not about religion, well, actually, the UN has recognized it as a religion. So the Temple of Hip Hop is recognized as a religion. But anyway, as I digress, KRS-One, who was this very influential guy in the hip hop community, had this to say.
Like, how is hip hop supposed to respond to the Bambaataa? Like, how are we supposed to do that?
What angle you want to take it from?
I just don't know. That's why it's a generic question. What should we do? Because you being our father,
sure.
Whatever you say, I have to move accordance to it.
Well, with the first of all, controversy is not truth. What you want is truth right now. You want truth. Right. But truth is also not information. It's not gossip. It's not even conversation. For me, if you keep it hip hop, nothing can be taken away from Africa Bambaata's contribution.
Not at all. Nothing.
Just keep it hip hop.
Right.
But if you want to dig into dude's personal life and accusations that's being made and so on, personally, I don't give a personally. Right. Look, if somebody was harmed or whatever was done or whatever, y'all deal with that shit. What? Deal with it. Right. That don't stop hip hop. Right. That don't stop what you did for hip hop.
Take away the legacy.
Don't take away none of it. History's history.
Right.
But deal with that. That's personal. I don't. I don't even know what to say.
Because I don't know the facts of the case.
No, but even if you knew the facts,
right?
You know what I'm saying? A person like me, I deal with dudes that are questionable all the time.
Right.
Not just if the accusation is rape.
Right.
I know dudes that are doing, you know what I'm saying? Right. If you know anybody from prison, if you know anybody from the shelter, if you know anybody, if you live really in the hoods, you know shooters, you know dudes running from your man might have an open warrant on him right now. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I'm not judging these. Man, it's my right here, yo. That's it.
Right.
Now, what you do in your crime and your shit, whatever you doing, that's on you. That's you, my G. That's whatever you doing. That's how I always dealt with it. I can't pick and choose.
So, when it comes down to it, how do you go from pedophilia, in the regular sense that we know, the common person, we know that pedophilia is bad. And we know that people who engage in those type of acts should go to jail, or they should be prosecuted or persecuted some type of way. How do you go from that to you just really don't give a you-know-what? How do you go to that? And you're saying that this doesn't take away from the hip-hop community because he's just been so influential in the hip-hop community. Well, it's African Bambaataa, And that's the way we've just been sweeping things up under the rug. Whenever someone has been accused of pedophilia, we've just been sweeping it up under the rug. Which brings me to my next point. There's an organization. Now, I thought this organization was fake. Okay, I remember when I was a kid, I used to watch South Park, and they had this organization on here called NAMBLA, NAMBLA. It's the North American Man Boy Love Association. I honestly thought that it was fake. I was like, there's no way that someone has an organization called that, and these people are allowed to have this organization and to be fully functional here in the United States. Well, that's actually not true. This organization actually exists, and it's called NAMBLA. Like I said, North American Man Boy Love Association, and they are fighting. This is no joke. They are fighting for their right to be in relationships, to be in a relationship with children, primarily little boys. These are grown men who are fighting for the right to be in a relationship with little boys. They're fighting to drop the age of consent, all of that type of stuff. And this is an organization that people are giving to. They're giving money to this organization to help keep this organization afloat, to keep their website online. And they're fighting in court to lower the age of consent. So therefore, we can decriminalize pedophilia. And this is and this organization is being allowed to be operational and funded by the American people or people across the world or whatever. This is what I really want to get into. The pedophiles are most likely going to win this battle. They are. I can see this actually, pedophilia actually being legalized, or the age of consent being dropped so low in this country that it won't be no longer 18. I can see that the age of consent could be dropped lower than 5 or 6. I can actually see that happening in this country. Because number one, the first argument that the pedophiles are going to use is, well, if these kids are consenting to this, and I feel like that I was born to be attracted to children, then how can you tell me that something is wrong with me mentally when you got a man who goes and transition himself into a woman, and you guys say that that's totally fine and that's totally normal, but here I am, a guy who is engaging in sexual behavior with a child who may be consenting. How can you say that we're both wrong for wanting to be in a relationship with each other? And that's going to be the main argument. And another reason why I say that they're going to win the battle is because the LGBT community has been basically paving the way for the pedophiles. And I'm just going to put it out there. And the reason why I say that is because I remember I watched the video. And this is how I knew how serious or how the pedophiles were actually going to start to kind of wiggle their way into the LGBT community, or how pedophilia was now going to start to be something, was going to start to become a part of our normal society. So watching the video, and this was at a gay pride parade. I think this happened about 2 years ago. And they had this kid, I'll never forget, somebody shared this on Facebook. They had this kid outside dancing and twerking at a gay pride parade. And people looked at that, and a lot of people were supportive of it. They were supportive of this kid, this LGBT kid, at a gay pride parade, gyrating and doing provocative dancing at a place that claims to be all about love, a place that celebrates sexuality. The LGBT movement is all about a sexual revolution. And that's what it's about. It's about people being free to do what they want sexually. It has nothing to do with trying to better society and make it to where, we're in a stable society. It's all about, it's a celebration of sex. That is what the LGBT movement is about. And now we're starting to see that people are getting ready to take it into the next stage of their sexual freedom. And they're going to win. Because back when the LGBT movement started to become popular, they started to try to put this in the schools. And there was a lot of people who were against it, who are still against it. I myself, I'm still against being taught LGBT stuff into the schools, but my kids are homeschooled, so we're not really, we're not really too concerned. But I remember I was watching a video one time, and they only had the audio of where these people from the LGBT community, I think they went to this middle school, and they had these 2 LGBT guys. They came into this classroom and they was teaching the kids about homosexuality. Now, they started talking about, if I can find the audio, I'm going to play it for you guys, but they started talking about how they were, well, basically they went pretty graphic into what they do sexually with each other, and I'm not going to utter that on this video. But they were talking about how they do some of these things in their bedrooms, and the teachers basically had to stop them. They had to stop them and say, "Hey, listen, the class is over. That's it. Thank you guys for showing up." And one of the teachers said that her mouth was just open. She couldn't believe that these guys actually came into this classroom and started talking about these issues or started getting into graphic detail. And a lot of these, it's like people, when it comes to the LGBT movement, people don't think about that this is all about sex. That's what it is. It's not about procreation. It's not about the right to human life. It's about sex, and that's all. That's all it is. And the LGBT community has been pumping more of that into the schools. They've been doing that with these children. Like, you have these drag queens that's going around to schools and stuff, and they are having story time with these kids, teaching these kids about homosexuality and all of this type of stuff.
Who wants to be a drag queen when they grow up?
Little Miss Hot Mess.
Who is ready for a story?
Is the host of Drag Queen Story Hour.
This one is called Worm Loves Worm.
Talking, singing, and reading.
We can both be grooms.
To an audience of preschoolers, toddlers, and their caregivers.
The hips on the drag queen go swish, 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 swish.
And they've been infiltrating the schools. They've been infiltrating the libraries, the classrooms, anywhere where kids are. They've been there promoting this. So now the pedophiles are now coming out and they're saying that we are a part of this community too. And the LGBT community is now trying to have a pushback to say, no, we're not about that. Let's be real for a minute. Now, the LGBT community, they have money and they have power. Okay, don't get that twisted. But the pedophilia community has a heck of a lot more money, and they have a heck of a lot more power than the LGBT community, and that's a fact. Don't think for a second that a lot of money from the pedophile community is not funding a lot of this LGBT stuff. The pedophile community has been funding the LGBT community. They have. And they've been doing it for a very long time. And a lot of people don't understand that. They think that the pedophiles have just been, are they just now starting to come out? Like, they don't have the power. They have the power. Just like I mentioned earlier, for a website like NAMBLA to be up and operational now, and you can go to their site, that should throw a red flag to say, how come no one is trying to take this site down? So that just goes to show you right there that they have power. I'm going to tell you how much power they have. Think about it. You hear more about people going to jail or going to prison from pedophilia in any religion, race, class, whatever. And there's a lot of people that you can talk to them, and there's a lot of people here in America who will tell you that they have been sexually assaulted or they've been raped or molested by someone older in this country. And that is prevalent. In fact, it happens so much, I believe that maybe 2 or 3 out of 5 people have a story. People that you know personally have a story about being sexually assaulted or sexually molested when they were children. That's a fact. Think about the child sex slave thing that's going on, which you really don't hear too much about. And a lot of people have kept that under wraps. It's still going on. There's still children being sold as sex slaves, but you don't hear too much about it. The media's not covering that. They're covering Donald Trump eating ice cream and pouring out fish food to fishes and all of this other stuff, and you've been distracted by that stuff, and no one's really talking about the child sex slavery that's still happening, the missing children. I believe that there's so many cases of pedophilia and rape going on that you can't cover all of the stories. There's no way that you can cover all of these stories. And there are billionaires who are engaged in a lot of this sex trafficking. Now, I don't know exactly who they are, but there are a lot of billionaires who are supportive of this. There are millionaires who are supportive of this. There are millionaires who actually go to other countries to have sex with children. Yeah, that's a reality. And I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to give you an example of how much of a reality it is. I used to work at this company, right? And I'm not going to name out the company. I'm not going to, call any names or anything like that. But I used to work at this company. It was owned by a guy and his two sons. Now, I was in my early 20s when I started working at this company. And the two sons were, I think one of them, he had to be about 29 at the time. And the other one, he was about maybe 34, 35. So these were some pretty young guys, okay, who were basically partners with their father. Now, the one who was like 29, he was, getting married, going to college, just a pretty stand-up guy. But his older brother was kind of the, scumbag type guy. Anyway, every year, this guy would make a trip over to the Dominican Republic. So, after he would invite some people, after he invited a couple of guys to go to the Dominican Republic with him, they never went back. And I remember he came to me, and I mean, we weren't close or anything like that. But I remember he came up to me and he asked me to go to the Dominican Republic with him. He was like, man, listen, you can come and you can hang out with me and we can go to the Dominican Republic. He was always looking for somebody to go with. And I was like, I'll think about it. I was like, I don't have a passport or anything like that. And plus, I wasn't making as much money as he was. And he was just like, don't worry about it. You get your passport. And, I'll pay for your ticket and you could just pay me back maybe $50-$60 until you pay off the balance or whatever. And I was like, okay, I was kind of considering it. So anyway, one guy that I was working with, he overheard it. And he told me straight up, he says, you don't want to go to the Dominican Republic with this guy. And he said, if I were you, I would just say no. I would back out. And I said, wow, what's going on? He said, because a couple of guys who went to the Dominican Republic with him said that this guy's a straight pig. And they said all he wants to do is to go to this country and pick up the young female prostitutes who are like 10 to maybe 13 and just have sex with these little girls the whole time he's there. He says that's all he does is try to get the youngest girls that he can and to have sex with them. And he was like, you don't want to be a part of that. He said that guy's a pig, he's nasty, he's slimy, he's gross. Stay away from him. When I heard that, I lost all respect for that guy. So of course he asked me a couple of days later. I declined. I said no, I'm not going to the Dominican Republic. Knowing what I knew about him, I said I don't want to be a part of that. So when you think about one example of that happening, because let's face it, a place like Dominican Republic, if you have money, a lot of people will turn their eyes or turn their backs onto things such as pedophilia because you have money. When you're looking at a poverty-stricken country like that, if someone says that, hey, I'm going to give you $80, $90 to have sex with this child, someone will turn a blind eye and say, okay, do what you got to do, but make sure that you pay me. Because this is the type of world that we live in. We live in a fallen world. When I say that it's fallen and it is sin-stricken, it is fallen and sin-stricken. Now, this guy, I'm pretty sure he was probably making a little bit over $1 million a year, if that. But think about the ones who are making tens and hundreds of millions of dollars a year. Think about it. Think about your actors and your actresses. Think about the Kevin Spaceys. The people who are highly influential in this country who get caught up on these charges. Look at the Catholic priests. A lot of these Catholic priests have been caught up in this. For years, people have been talking about it. What do? They don't arrest these guys. They turn around and just transfer them to another church. It's just like even in the evangelical church. You know, the thing that happened allegedly with Eddie Long. So it's all over. This is all over the place. The pedophile community, the guys who are really into this stuff, they have the money and they have the power. And these men have, and these people have backed the LGBT community. They've taken their money and they've supported the LGBT community because they knew that if they supported the LGBT community, that they were going to end up getting what they wanted when it comes to the age of consent, lowering the age of consent and all of this stuff. So they wanted to, I believe that the pedophiles, they kind of guinea pig the LGBT community. And they say, well, let's see how far this goes. And let's see how much America is going to embrace these people. So once they begin to embrace these people, then we can start slowly but surely coming out of the closet. Because let's think about it. Right now, we may say, pedophilia is something that should be punished. People who are pedophiles should be thrown up under the jail, whatever. But you remember, people had that same ideology about homosexuality 30, 40 years ago. It's not too long ago when people looked at homosexuals and they were just like, no, I believe that these people, should be far removed from society. Jamaica was one of those places to where if you were homosexual, you had to fear for your life. Not even Jamaica has now taken a softer approach to homosexuality. So now we see the pedophiles starting to come out. And right now people are they're to the point to where they're saying there's no respect for pedophiles, but how long that's going to last? And what's going to happen is that how society does all the time, they're going to find a poster child for that. Not a child, not a child literally. When they may find a child literally, but they're going to find a person who is highly influential, and they're going to put them in this position to speak up for pedophilia. And they're probably going to bring in some children who are going to basically say, hey, this is my choice. This is what I want to do. I love this person. I want to be with this person. And America and society is going to slowly but surely start to convert to this. But this is why us as Christians, we have to speak up on this stuff. And this is why we have to address this stuff, because we have a foundation that's rooted in the Bible. So see, when you step away from God's word and you decide that you want to push God out of society, and you want to start bringing in your own thoughts and your own aspirations and your own version of love and all of this stuff here, you've opened the door for everyone else to do the same thing. It's just like opening a door to an underwater submarine. Even if you try to crack it just a little bit, the water is going to come rushing in. And that's what we're seeing in society. People are bum rushing to get in on this sexual revolution because, number one, sex sells. And sex is one of the things that is, when it is used incorrectly, it becomes a problem in our society. It becomes a problem in the person's life. That's why people, even in the evangelical Christian community, there's a lot of stuff that is happening in the evangelical Christian community that is dividing the churches And a lot of times it's about sex. It's about people who are either LGBT, people who are pedophiles, people who are adulterers. And this is why when we address the sin of sex, we don't just talk about people who are gay. We talk about people who are perverting God's design for a man and a woman. And when you pervert that, then you start to have stuff like this happening. But like I said, this is gonna be passed. And all I'm just saying is that get ready. Christians, get ready for this. Because this is a new battle that's gonna start taking place. We're not gonna have to fight the pedophiles. And like I said before, I believe that the pedophiles have a lot of money, a lot more money and a lot more power than the LGBT community. But this is why we have to get back to the Bible. We have to start setting our foundation in Christ. Because when you don't have a foundation in Christ and you have a foundation in the world or what society or what government thinks, then everything is fair game. Because what's going to happen when the government makes this legal? And I believe that they're going to make it legal. They're going to drop the age of consent. I believe it because they've allowed for the LGBT community to infiltrate the schools. And I believe that they have been grooming these kids. They've been grooming these kids about sexuality and all of this stuff. So therefore, when these kids have an understanding of sexuality, when they not supposed to be having an understanding about sexuality and all of this stuff, the pedophiles are basically going to say, you guys have been grooming them all of this time. They understand exactly what's going on. So why deny me, or why deny my right to go and sleep with a child when they already understand what's going on and they want to do it too? So how are you going to combat that? You know, and this is just something that has just been so prominent in our society. I mean, I remember when I was living in South Florida, there was a guy, he was the weatherman, and he was caught, trying to lure some kid, or what he thought was a kid. He was chatting in his chat room, and he thought he was talking to a child. He was talking to some federal agents, and they busted him for child pedophilia. And I think he may be out of prison now, but he was in there for a while. So it's just something to think about, guys. And that's all I got to say for this video. As usual, you guys like, rate, share, comment, subscribe. And this is probably going to get my channel deleted. So if you guys may want to download this video, keep it as a reference. But this is probably going to get my channel deleted. I'm probably going to get this video deleted. Or I might get red flagged or red striked or something like that. But, as always, you guys have a blessed day.